Hello and welcome to Wardens of the Cross. This is the Defender. Among the many ridiculous and outrageous claims which have been created regarding the Catholic Church, the story of Pope Joan lies as one of the most bogus and phony of them all. Yet it is widely accepted as fact by many, including Catholics. While the existence of, quote, Pope Joan is highly unlikely in a logical sense, it is also not supported in the slightest by either historic records or documents from any chronicler from any age. In the course of this episode, we will look over the story of, quote, Pope Joan, and we shall use logic and historic facts to prove that the story of Joan is nothing more than a fictitious invention and a myth. The first appearance of the story of, quote, Pope Joan was in the 12th century when the first sketchy reports of a female pope appeared in medieval Europe. The supposed popess was claimed to have reigned in the Vatican in either 855 or 1100 AD. The dates vary from one teller to the other because they are not nailed down in any certain sense. At any rate, this, quote, popess supposedly became a priest and through great works of disguise was able to conceal her identity from the rest of the world and rose to the level of cardinal. This cardinal then allegedly was elected as pope and ruled the Vatican for some 3 years before she became pregnant and gave birth in the midst of a papal procession. All of this is part of the story, not fact. After this point, the story varies from one teller to another. Some say she was stoned and beat to death and buried on the spot, while others claim that she was disposed and sent to the convent to do penance for the rest of her life. Whatever supposedly happened, neither of these variations on the story are backed in any way, as we shall now prove. Our first point is that during the supposed time frame of, quote, Pope Joan's reign, there was a pope. The legend of Pope Joan has her set in either 855 or 1100. There are no gaps in either of these years. In fact, to cite the Catholic Encyclopedia, in the history of the popes, there is no place where the legendary figure will fit in. Between Leo IV and Benedict III, where history supposedly places her, there is not the space to have her inserted. Secondly, there is a significant lack of historical evidence for the story of this, quote, popess. In fact, she is not mentioned until the 1200s by a historian named Martinus Polonius. However, he never actually wrote about her in his manuscripts. The details of Pope Joan were added after his death. Interestingly, at the time, the Theophylact family was controlling the Pope in the time frame where Pope Joan was supposed to have lived. One of the Theophylact women seduced the reigning Pope, Pope Sergius, and bore his child. The entire church was scandalized, and jokes about the, quote, popess were made since it was so obvious that Pope Sergius had handed his power over for sexual favors. That is the most likely origin of the Pope Joan legend. The legend, however, became widely popular during the Protestant Reformation, when Protestants tried to discredit the Catholic Church by, quote, shaming her with this supposed revelation to the people. It is also important to realize just how absurdly impossible it is that a woman could become pope without being revealed through the ranks of priest and bishop. However, since this time, quote, Pope Joan has become a feminist icon and a symbol of defiance against Catholicism and traditional society. Her image is now portrayed with demonic symbols and words on tarot cards and other such satanic devices, and she is popularized in novels and film where facts are treated with little to no difference, feminism is glorified, and the church herself is abused and supposedly shamed with such foolish folly. Many ignorant people laugh about the whole ordeal and point to it as an example of Catholic idiocy and ignorance in events occurring under their very own noses, when the reality is that, quote, Pope Joan is a hoax and a fraud, and there is no testimony or account which is set in stone to show that she ever existed. The existence of the popess or, quote, Pope Joan is non-existent. It's a myth. At most, it was created as a running joke of sorts to make fun of a pope who sold himself for sexual powers. But she certainly never existed as a person. The chances that a woman could work up from a priest to a pope without ever being detected by anybody is statistically impossible. But when you add logic to it, it is quite obvious that she never existed. For all of the hype that has been built up around, quote, Pope Joan, there is no historic fact and not even a solid set story on her life or death. Pope Joan never existed, and it is time that many people come to realize that. The Catholic Church has never been shamed in such a matter, and the existence of this, quote, Pope is a poor argument to use against God's Church because she never walked the earth. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. If you agree with what you heard in this content, give us a like. If you have a comment, question, concern, or anything else, please feel free to comment below and we'll get back to you. Subscribe and hit the bell to stay up to date on all of our most recent content, and go to the link shown on the screen to check out our website at www.wardenofthecross.weebly.com. We hope to see you again. God bless.